Hello, good day, responsible decision makers. Welcome back to our discussion. And this is the continuation of the corporate social responsibility topic in our last session. So today we'll be discussing corporate social responsibilities, issues, and its complexity. So CSR has been sometimes vague. Ibig sabihin, hindi ganun kalinaw para sa iba. And some loses direction. Where are they going? So let's discuss those issues and its complexity. No? Okay. So uh, the idea of corporate social responsibility is not even and has different meaning from different countries and different companies in particular. So awareness of an even spread of the benefits and costs of globalization reinvigorated the debate about the role of multinational companies or corporations in developing countries for sustainable development. No? At the very least, corporate social responsibility in emerging countries or developing countries, ang focus nila is for the sustainable development. So the debate as highlighted above has often been acerbic and emotionally charged and tends to be driven by concentrate on sensational and high-profile cases with limited analysis of common themes and possible solution. Kumbaga, the corporate social responsibility on emerging markets or the developing countries, no, as discussed in your contemporary world, this developing countries merong imbalance of economics, there are political issues, mas malaki at mas malawak yung mga problema nila. And at some point, CSR doing companies are being at the middle of the situation. And of course, that's the idea is for nation building, as discussed with our past lesson. Here in the Philippines, as one of the developing countries, na-experience natin yan. And kasi as part of the law, the voluntarism law, we companies are encouraged to do activities that will be beneficial in the nation building, not just the people in the country. No? So uh, these cases are sensationalized, and there are high profile cases wherein there are misinterpretation, misunderstood about the role of the companies in their CSR to the nation building. So let's see. Okay, so factors responsible on the CSR development relationship. At some point, this diagram will let you think about ano yung nagiging problema. So first is the complexity and the absence of consensual definition for the concept of CSR and development. Iba-iba kasi tayo ng tingin about development. Iba't iba tayo ng tingin about the responsibility. Mine may think that personally, I may think that hanggang dito lang yung role ko. No? Yung iba sobrang lawak naman ang role nila, and that's why minsan sumasobra sila. No? Sabi nga nila may ibang naapakan, and I won't be talking about specific cases there. Okay? And then the overemphasis of corporate responsibility to detriment of reciprocal responsibility and the importance of the in the midst of the importance of the concept. While corporate social responsibility and the responsibility in the society is really important, no? At some point, nagiging overemphasize yung corporate social responsibility. And by the way, there are underperforming and underperforming with their promise of their corporate social responsibility. No? Kumbaga, nasosobrahan sila, and they use that as a marketing front, na as I've mentioned in the past discussion, that papogi nga ang corporate social responsibility because it's a give and take relationship, but at some point it's overemphasized that hindi na reach yung target. And lastly is the limited analytical focus in their research agenda, wherein they don't research about it, and then they do what they want, no? Of course, this society, no? And di rin natin alam kung anong pwede sabihin ng ibang tao. So let's proceed. So the complexity and the absence of consensual definitions. The concept of CSR and development are both complex, as I mentioned earlier. Masyado silang malawak, and it's difficult to consensually define and are therefore open to different interpretation. No, iba't iba kasi. Yun nga ang tingin ko. No, nasabi ko kanina na iba't iba tayo ng tingin dun sa responsibility natin. The inability to secure a common definition of CSR is said to restrict its usefulness as an analytical tool and guide to decision makers. No? Nagiging ano pa nga ito punot dulo ng ilang mga problema. No? Okay. So, now the overemphasis in the corporate responsibility, emphasis on whether CSR does or does not contribute to the development has led to a lack of reflexity in the analysis of CSR development. No? Analysis very often fail to problematize adequately the specific content uh, of developing countries and ascertain how this affects what constitute corporate responsibility and the impact of corporate CSR initiatives on development. No, kasi kailangan ngang as I mentioned earlier, this also need to be studied, no? Okay? And yun nga, limited analytical focus. Another shortcoming of existing analysis has been a tendency to focus too much on an outcome, almost to the detriment of the process and impact. No? Uh, it's more on the think of the outcome, no? At some point, meron tayo nagiging unethical thing na ginagawa para lang makalid tayo dun sa outcome. Of course, remember the idea of good governance, kasali dyan yung rule of law, no, in the consensus orientation. So, it is as if in the rush to find out whether or not CSR meets its advertised objectives, academics feel they can afford to treat as insignificant the question of how business tries to meet these objectives. No? Minsan nasa meron silang shortcomings doon sa pinapangako nila, no? Of course, this involves the process. No? So how to strengthen the critical perspective with the CSR development cycle? That the foregoing analytical shortcomings are by no means the only challenges confronting the discourse of the CSR development linkage. No? The issues are highlighted here largely because they are crucial for the advancement of theoretical development on the field of corporate social responsibility. So it is important because the most serious problem with social responsibility doctrine is still at the level of theory rather than practice. Again, we go back to the idea of the perspective. We have different perspective and at some point we create problems because and understanding because we have different perspective. Nag-aaway tayo because iba't iba tayo ng tingin sa iba't ibang mga bagay. That's the main problem of CSR. So, one company think that this is good as part of their CSR, one do not. And the society has a different perspective in so many instances. No? So, how you manage the problem of complexity, conceptual complexity. While the lack of common CSR definition constrains the conceptual usefulness of CSR as an analytical concept, this should not be exaggerated. If you will deny the conceptual specificity and clarity will facilitate intellectual thought and communication. A number of frequently used concepts are intrinsically abstract and therefore inevitably subject to diverse interpretation. No? Iba't iba tayo ng pananaw dun sa ano. How can you solve that? Let's go back to the idea of the company, its core values, no? And then as long as you follow the rules of the elements of good governance and you consider each party, no? I think you can manage this problem of the conceptual complexity. There should have been a standard, no? Para maging para maging united stand nyo in a company, no? So the need to focus on reciprocal responsibility. The CSR practice do not take place in vacuum. no? Uh, we are related to one another. Pag sinabi mong nabubuhay ka sa isang vacuum, ikaw lang mag-isa. No? So, CSR does not take place in a vacuum. So, because it involves the society, no? Such initiatives are often undertaken within certain social, economic, and cultural contexts with diverse actors seeking leverage with their interests. There is, therefore, the need for the complexity to be appreciated not only during the data collection in the field, but also in the analysis of CSR development linkages. Ano yung mga linkages na yun? You need to think about this. Okay? So, you need to see the environment, the marketplace, your customer, the workplace or your employees, no, people in your organization, the environment, no, the natural environment, and as well as the community outside that may be affected by your decisions. So your CSR totally yan, hindi lang yung communities involved na sinasabi natin, but also internally, no. Ito yung mga magiging topic natin. This will be the proceedings of our topics in good governance and social responsibility subject. We'll be talking about the relationship of the company and its employee, and the community and the environment, and even the marketplace. No? Okay, so it's very general to talk about what can we do with the community, as mentioned by our last discussion in recorded video. No? But we'll be talking about its impact to the marketplace, its impact to the workplace, and its impact to the environment. So we'll be digging deeper to those concerns. So far, the emphasis whether the CSR contributes to the development says a little about the impact of CSR on society. So besides the issue of analytical oversight, business impact on development is difficult to measure, no? Kasi nga minsan hindi significant, no? Uh, pwedeng hindi related, no? So hindi nakadepende kasi 'yun eh. No, depende 'yun. So business impact on development is difficult to measure, no? If the impact of corporate activity are difficult to access at a local level, then this more difficult kung ano yung effect mo sa society as well. No? So, medyo mahirap i-measure yon. No? So, the implication of emerging issues and conclusions are, these are the two main emerging issues with regard to the critical challenges facing CSR development relationship. One, the first is how to identify appropriate balance of responsibilities between the different actors. So, we've mentioned of the actors earlier, and how they could beat and combine to maximize the different actors. Remember, we have different perspective, but if we go back to the idea of elements of good governance, and everything will be put into place, they will be represented, there's a fair justice, there's a rule of law, no? I think this will be solved, no? Yung emerging issue na yun will be solved dahil pwede magkakaroon tayo ng standard o pare-parehong rulings about a certain situation. And similarly, by distinguishing between negative injunction and affirmative duties, the business case argument ceases to be the cornerstone of the argument that drives CSR practices, especially as it relates to negative injunction duties. At some point, sabi nga, baka hindi mo na trabaho yan, pinapakialaman mo pa. And at some point, you're doing extra. No? So, you just need to distinguish what should have been done para, especially in the branding, they know that this is your work and this is part of your advocacies and the likes. Huh? So, that's how complex is corporate social responsibility. Di lang pwedeng uh, bigay ka ng bigay. At some instances, it may be detrimental. Sabi nga, you promise this, you have said this, minsan hindi nag-effective. You need to research about it. Okay? That's pretty much it, and next video we'll be discussing more about the those actors, the community, the workplace, the market environment, the marketplace and the environment in particular. With that, thank you for tuning in. See you again on to the next one. God bless.